Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to lesson 6 of the MyListing course, Recreating the Canvas Starter Site. For those of you that have been following along with this course, this slight rebranding of the course name. So now instead of it being MyListing 101, I think it's more accurate to say MyListing course, and then what we're doing, which is recreating the Canvas Starter Site. So I thought it would be best to make that name change right now. So so that is that. That's what you will hear going forward. Pull up on my screen here is our agenda for today, which has everything to do with Elementor settings. Before we do that, we're going to get into, I'm going to quickly cover the previous lesson recap. So to this point, we've worked up to getting our coming soon page out there. So we get that page up there, we get subscribers getting into our newsletter while we are now starting to build in the back of our site, right? So we put our logo in place, we put our favicon in place, and we got our coming soon mode in place. And now it's time to, like I say, build in the background, okay? So that's where we're at. We're gonna look at Elementor plugin settings, what I set for Canvas. I'm going to explain best practices. We're going to go through all of, even the ones I haven't set for Canvas. We're going to go through my thoughts on what you should and shouldn't set, best practices, what some of this stuff means. And then we're going to finalize the Elementor site settings for our Canvas site. Okay. All right. So that's the agenda for today. One of the things I wanted to point out as part of configuring the site settings, in a situation where we're not recreating this together and maybe you want to recreate the starter site on your own, I've got a post on how to do that if you want to go that far. I still recommend, I always will recommend just buying the starter site. It's better in a million different ways. But if you want to try your hand at recreating the part where I'm talking about in this particular lesson, you can go to the MyListing Club website and scroll down to the resources and go into starter site kits. Basically, these kits include all of the settings that we've covered for Elementor in this course so far. So it's all of the Elementor templates, which we haven't really gotten into yet other than the coming soon page, but it's all of the content that's Elementor based. And then, like I said, what I'm specifically covering in these in the course so far is these Elementor site settings. So all of that stuff would just be set up for you in one shot. So one download, import it into your site, and you're good to go. The colors, the fonts, the layout, all that stuff. Okay, so I wanted to point that out. As part of this course, again, one of the things I really wanted to do was not skip anything at all. So I could have behind the scenes finished up these site settings, which there's only a few that we need to knock down real quick. But I want to show you like literally everything. Okay, so I have not touched any more site settings. I haven't done anything outside of what we've covered in the course, right? So we're just going to take a few moments here to finalize the site settings. For that, all I'm doing is pulling up our blank homepage on our new site. And I'm going to go up here and go into site settings for Elementor. And then we're going to run through these settings right here that are in here. And to do that, I've got the site settings pulled up on the actual Canvas site. So we're just going to do a comparison real quick. This won't take very long. So going to site settings here, global colors. We've already done a lesson on that. We're good to go there. We've got all of our colors set up. Global fonts, that was covered in a course. So we are all good there. Nothing to do. Typography, we covered that in a course. So the courses here, so go ahead and check that out. Nothing to do. Buttons, I'm going to double check here and see if there's anything else that I missed on these. We've got our font set, we've got our colors, our border radius. Yeah, that's good to go. Images, I didn't do anything with this. Form fields, let's see what I did there. The only thing I did here was set the font size. Okay, we did that already, or I did that already, maybe by accident. Like I said, I wanted to show you guys everything, but so all I did is I went in here into the field. Maybe I already did this with as part of the course, but I can't remember. Anyway, so I set the using global fonts. I just called up our extra small font size for the form field there. Okay, and that should be it for that. Yeah, that's it. All right, moving on. Site identity. We've just done all of that stuff together in WordPress side of things instead of from the Elementor side of things. But if you go into here, you'll see it's all the similar stuff. Background. I don't think I changed anything for that. Yeah, didn't change anything for that, so we're good. Layout. So what I do for this is I set this to 1200. Okay, so this is our content width, right? So you can set this to whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. You can Google around and do your own research. It's more of a matter of design preferences. You can roll with the 1140 pixels wide. I think that's too small. I found a sweet spot with 1200. Some designers like to go up to 1300 to 1400. It's just, you got to toy with what you want for yourself, okay? And everything else in here is the defaults. Yeah, I didn't mess with any breakpoints. I find that if you do everything correctly, as far as fluid typography and with your global fonts and doing all that stuff, and you're designing the right way, that you can get by with just the default breakpoints of mobile portrait, tablet portrait, and then desktop. Okay, so all I did here again in the layout settings was change this to 1200. Lightbox. For this one, we want to, and I would say, I'm not going to say most or a lot of cases. I'm going to say you're going to want to toggle off image lightbox, because if you don't do this, there's an issue with MyListing to where, let's say you go into a single listing and you go and you click on a gallery image, which is going to bring up kind of like a little slideshow, or even if it's not, even if it's just a single image in there, maybe from a grid or whatever, it's going to pull up that image in a lightbox if that's how you have it configured, and it's going to do a double lightbox. So there's going to be two lightboxes that they have to get through there. So that is what this is for. You just have to make note. Let me actually bring up one thing. There's one thing I forgot to bring up, and that is our actual project board here. So let me do that. All right, so this is where we left off here on our project board. I'm going to pull up our in progress task, which is the Elementor site settings. And you scroll down. Yeah, here we go. So this is, if you have the project template, you can read through this, but we're going to read through this together right now. By default, those who use the MyListing theme will give their users an undesirable double lightbox experience. This can be seen when a user clicks on a gallery image within a listing, for example. To prevent this, the image lightbox setting needs to be disabled. Note that this also disables the lightbox experience for areas of a MyListing website that have nothing to do with the theme, such as various Elementor-based image widgets. Unless you apply custom development in this area, you need to choose the lesser of two evils. So you need to figure out, is the double lightbox a deal killer compared to killing the image lightbox on Elementor's other image-based widgets? You have to find that balance of what you need there. And I mentioned custom development because I say you may need a custom solution to get it exactly the way you want and to find that balance. Maybe that's instead of using just an Elementor baked-in widget from the free version or the Pro, maybe you have to go to a third-party add-on to get what you need there. So it's all the same thing. Custom develop, whether a developer writes the code for you custom on the fly, or you purchase a custom solution, it's considered, as custom development. So long story short here, in most cases, like I said, I just recommend people just toggle off image lightbox here, to prevent that bad experience, undesirable experience in MyListing, and then you just adjust from there. Okay, so we toggle that off. Next up, I don't use any of these other items in here, so we're just going to save our changes. So click update. Okay, so at this point, our site settings are identical between the sites. This stuff over in here is a lot of its preferences. So like user preferences, you'll see that my sidebar here is dark mode. That's typically really the only thing I change here. It's changed to dark mode, up to you what you do there. And then you've got some other things here. I rarely ever use this stuff. Yeah, so not a big deal. I'll let you look through that stuff. I don't set any of that. I don't use the notes, or some of it's just advertising for Elementor and all that stuff. But anyway, the site settings, that was the key component here. So we've configured the layout and we've configured the lightbox, and we can now just get rid of this task. And next up here, we have the Elementor plugin settings. So this is going to be the core of our discussion here with this particular lesson. Okay, so lots to talk about here. Elementor Pro your screens are going to change. Let's go back here to, so you're in your WordPress dashboard, you go to Elementor and then settings, and this is what we're going to cover, everything in this area. And if you have Elementor Pro installed and activated, it's going to add some screens. It's not going to change anything that's existing with the free version. It's just going to add extra components, okay? So something to keep in mind I don't see this on my screen, I don't see what you're showing on your screen, it's not on mine. That would be because you don't have Pro installed. Okay, so running through this, what we're going to do in, like I said, we're going to run through all of these screens. When we get to the advanced tab, especially the advanced tab and the features, that's where we're going to do some talks about what the stuff is, best practices, and things like that, okay? So before we get into those, in this general area here, I don't touch anything in here to start. I just leave this one as is. On integrations, same thing. I don't touch anything in here. Trying to think if there's anything I want to talk about in here. So a lot of it's just self-explanatory. You don't need MyListing has Google Maps if you want to use that, or it has the map box or OpenStreetMaps. You put in your settings over on the theme side rather than here. But if you're going to have a Maps widget with Elementor, then that's where you would put your API key in for this. So not to get confused, these are two different things, right? reCAPTCHA I do not recommend for any website, period. I would instead opt for Cloudflare Turnstile, which is a free solution that you can use along with Cloudflare. And there's a free plugin called Simple Cloudflare Turnstile by Elliot Soursby that I highly recommend and use myself. I never mess with this Facebook SDK. I just blow through that. I used to use MailChimp back in the day. If you use it, you can put in your key. I recommend MailPoet these days. Same thing, if you use ActiveCampaign, you can use that. ConvertKit, put your API key. And what it does when you put your API keys in here is that when you then go to use the solution, wherever it is on your website, you've already got that API key input into one spot, and this is going to keep pulling from that. So it's like a convenient location there. Same thing, get response, MailerLite. This WooCommerce mini template, I've usually just blow past that one. Maybe someday I'll look harder at that. It says set to disable in order to use your themes WooCommerce mini cart template. I've just never set that anywhere. So let me know in the comments if you do, if it does anything special. I don't use the Adobe Fonts type kit. Don't use Font Awesome Pro. Just use what's built into the theme. And then Stripe, same thing here. You can put Stripe in your WooCommerce settings. That's where I typically put it in. We're going to do that as part of this course. But this is a situation, again, kind of like the email things up here, like the email marketing, MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, all that. You would just put your Stripe key in here. And then that way, if you use any widgets with Elementor or whatever else, third-party add-ons with Elementor, then that API key is just going to be in there for you to use in one convenient spot. All right. So now for the meat and potatoes. I'm going to tell you exactly what I do, what I enable, what I don't enable, why, that sort of thing. So we're just going to run through all of these together. CSS print method, I leave this as the default setting, which is external file. What that allows you to do is to cache your CSS file. That's the simplest way I can tell you. If you go with the other option, you can't. Okay, so between internal embedding and external, I would go with the default external. Switch editor loader method, this is more for troubleshooting, so I would just leave this disabled. Enable unfiltered file uploads. We saw this in a previous lesson where we needed to upload an image that was SVG based, and we got an alert that said, do you want to upload this? It's a potential security risk. And yeah, we just enabled it and say, yes, we want to allow those uploads. Google Fonts. If you're going to use Google Fonts, then obviously you want this to be enabled. What I find is that if you disable this, then there's areas of my listing that will break. So I would just leave this on. And it's not, you think the thing that's complicated is it's not just what you think. It's not just like typography, like the headings and the text blocks and things like that. There's other things that come into play that can break. So even though I use system fonts on this starter site, for performance and whatnot, this is a bit it's a bit different. There's just other things to consider. So I would just leave this enabled. I'd say more often than not, people are going to just use a Google font anyway. Even though I implement system fonts and I preach system fonts as much as possible, I do understand that based on the business, the project, whatever, that people want to choose a Google font or two to make their site look a certain way, according to the branding, right? I get it. Google Fonts load, you want to leave this as swap, which is the default option. So far through here, everything is just the defaults, except for the enable unfiltered file uploads, which we enabled. Now, here is an interesting one. Optimized Gutenberg loading. This one, I disable, okay? And let me bring this project template over to my other screen so I can read what I have here. Okay, so just the narrative here. I'm going to leave you with this screen. I'm going to read this. This is based off of my research in testing, as well as reaching out to industry experts that produce products, performance optimization products, leading optimization products for the entire WordPress ecosystem, talking to them about things like this. Okay, so this is what I get out of it after all of those talks, okay? And again, like I said, I recommend disabling this setting. Otherwise, if WordPress blocks were anywhere other than the content container, this setting would break them. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? So if we go over here, let's go to our pages, and let's just pull up a page that is not edited with Elementor. Let's just say the cart. So let's say you were configuring the cart and you've got all these blocks and it's in the content area. And let's say that there's an outlier, right? Outside of the content, you found a way or had a way, did away, whatever, however you want to word it, to where the block was outside of the content container. It's hard to explain. And like I said, it's like an outlier, but this setting potentially, it breaks that setting, okay? So this isn't Elementor's fault. It's just due to what WordPress is capable of with the filters it uses. This is a bit nerdy, so I totally understand that. And with more and more people building with the WordPress core blocks, so that's like I showed you here on the cart page, you go in, let's add a new page actually, just for fun. So we go in here and you put in your page title, and then you start building with these blocks, right? So you're now building with the native WordPress blocks. More and more people are building this way. So even though you have an Elementor site, this is something I am looking into myself for my own sites, possibly even the starter site, existing starter sites, maybe if one's going forward, definitely with ones going forward, but using more and more block-based pages and not relying on Elementor for every single thing, right? So you're getting closer and closer back to WordPress core, eliminating performance issues, conflict issues. You're getting more back to the heart of what WordPress does, right? But with more and more people moving towards this sort of building and designing, this setting won't apply in most cases anyway. what Elementor is giving you here. And it already doesn't apply if a page is built with Elementor or even has a single WordPress core block in its content. So there's just so many levels here. If you drop even just one of these blocks, like a heading in here, at that point, this setting becomes useless. And it's just, you're enabling something that could potentially cause issues. It's obviously, it's going to load extra code on your site because extra, server processing time. Everything that you enable is adding something to your site. All right. So long story short, with all of this, I know that some of it is geeky. I would just recommend disabling that. You're not getting anything out of it really, and you're potentially causing issues. Okay. Next up is optimized image loading. And this is another one that I disable. So let me go ahead and read through this one. Elementor has been improperly adding fetch on images below the fold, creating a problem where the image will load sooner than it should. This essentially breaks lazy loading, which could hurt your site's performance. This one is also nerdy, but it is a bit easier to explain. You can actually see right here what they say. Applying a fetch priority of high on an LCP image, largest contentful paint. If you're familiar with Web Core Vitals, you can Google that. Has everything to do with website performance and if fixing that stuff so you can rank your website better with SEO. And so we're applying a fetch priority of high on LCP image and late loading lazy on images below the fold. Okay, so the loading lazy on images below the fold, that in of itself is not a problem. This is where the problem comes in, is fetch priority of high. So let's say on your website, pull up the club here. So this is above the fold, right? We're not having to scroll down. We're not having to do anything here. Like, this is the content right here that's above the fold, right? So with lazy loading, you're saying, let's speed up our site by not trying to load all of those images all at once. So we come down here. Let's say I had a logo in the footer area down here, which I no longer have. Let's say we did. Instead of loading that as part of our initial page load, let's lazy load it. Let's say, let's only pull in that logo when we're in a certain, within a certain distance from the viewports in a certain distance of that logo. Hey, let's get that logo added, loaded, or maybe we load the logo after the rest of our page is fully loaded, and then instead of calculating it by viewport, and then by the time I scroll down here, my logo is going to be there. Okay. Now, what Elementor is doing is they are adding a fetch priority of high. Okay. And what that can do and has been doing in a lot of cases is it breaks the lazy loading. So it's their settings are competing with each other and it's breaking lazy loading. So it's, instead of only then pulling in this logo in the footer only when it's viewable and needed, it's just going ahead and fetching it at a high priority, which is defeating the purpose of lazy loading. Okay. So it's, that is that. Okay. Hopefully it's not too geeky, but so I disable that. A side tangent here. I do all of my lazy loading in Perf Matters. And then, because I host with Kinsta, which has an enterprise partnership with Cloudflare, all of those three levels work together to deliver images, in an optimal way. All right. As far as lazy loading goes, and other ways, but we're specifically talking about lazy loading here. Okay, so last up here is, well, not last up. There's one more here. So I did a help desk ticket just over this weekend. I think it was yesterday. Excuse me. MyListing. If you have MyListing enabled as the theme, it's going to automatically force this on here. Load Font Awesome 4 support. I have a help desk ticket out there. If you guys want to find it and chime in on it and vote on it as being a potential issue. Font Awesome 5 has been around for 3 years. Okay. And Font Awesome 6 was released, I believe, this month. So for MyListing to force this in here, it's time that needs to stop, in my opinion. We need to get off of Font Awesome 4. Because what this does is it loads a script. Okay, so every time your page loads, it's going to load this JavaScript we see here, shim.js. I don't know the size of the script off the top of my head, but we shouldn't be forced to use this at this point. If Font Awesome 5 was like newer, like just came out, yeah, not a big of an issue because Font Awesome 4 icons are, aren't out of call it support or whatever. They're heavily used. Yeah, we get that, right? But Font Awesome 5 has been around, like I said, 3 years. Font Awesome 6 just came out. It's just time to get with the times, right? So anyway, hopefully eventually we can turn this off and not experience any issues with my listing. The last thing I want to mention here is, so yeah, like I said, if I set this to no, let's go ahead and save changes. It's just not going to save it. It keeps going back to yes. All right, the generator tag, this one I disable as well. And I'll just read my notes. I recommend disabling the setting. Otherwise, Elementor will include additional information that doesn't belong in your source code. So if you inspect your page and you look at the source code, you're going to find identifiers in that source code that Elementor is using to track the usage of their stuff, right? It's adding to your page load times. It may not be a massive hit, but as I say, and I will continue to say, everything adds up. Every small hit adds up. Okay. Yeah. So that's it. I disable that and I save changes. Next up is the features. All right. So I'll go ahead. Let me just read again from my notes here, just so I don't make sure I don't forget my own thoughts. Elementor experiments. So we're looking, they call them experiments and features. We'll first talk about the experiments, which is this ongoing experiments section up here at the top. Elementor experiments allow Elementor users to test and help shape new features before they are released to the general public as a stable, in air quotes, feature. So let's put Elementor saying, let's put these features in experiments in the hands of our huge user base, and let's let them report issues, and we will adjust. And once we things quiet down and we feel like it's stable, then we're going to move it down here into the stable features. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. Any experiment you activate has the potential to conflict with your website or negatively impact its performance. They are called experiments for a reason. Okay, if somebody comes out with a miracle weight loss drug and they call it an experimental weight loss drug, are you just going to take it, or are you going to say, "Hey, this is experimental. I'm going to the hell with that. I'm not taking any medication that says experimental." It's think of it in that terms. Yeah. So then I go on to say here, an Elementor experiment should only be active. So only turn these on. So even if it says default, it might be on, and you can tell that because of this little green little indicator here, active by default. Okay, so you got to be sure to set something inactive. Okay, so again, an Elementor experiment should only be active if all of the following are true. You possess the technical knowledge to troubleshoot issues or have professional website support options with a vendor who can help you. So the very first one. If you do not possess the knowledge it takes to know when something on here that setting on here is breaking your site in the first place, that's a no-no. Okay. The first no-no actually is in my opinion, you shouldn't enable these. Okay. At all. But if you do, you got to possess the knowledge to know where to look to see if you're even breaking things with your site. Or you have support services with a website professional, like with the MyListing Club. Maybe you have website care with me, manage my listing, or you've bought some support hours, or you're in the club community. Then you could potentially get, you could get help. You could definitely get help with all of those areas. The club community, that's a little dicier just because we don't log into your websites and fix things for you that way. But the other things are more log in, help you fix issues. But if you don't have either of those, definitely don't, right? But I'm saying all of these things must be true. And that's just number one. Number two, your website requires the feature to function, which should rarely be the case. So you would have to tell me that I absolutely have to have grid container for my website to function. I have to have display conditions for my website to function. Okay. And by function, you know, that could mean a few different things. I'm not literally saying like the website will just, and it's inaccessible if I don't enable that, but like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, you know, maybe there's something you need to do to enable up there that helps you monetize better, right? Maybe it's display conditions or a landing page or whatever, right? Or something in there that is just required by your website, your business. You have to have it, right? That would be another thing. So that's point 2 that you must, in my opinion, you must match to turn these on. The last one is you're willing to take a slight performance hit. I've already covered that. Everything's a hit, performance hit. Everything you turn on adds code. Everything you turn on requires the server, your web server to do something else. Okay. So again, only if all of those things are true would I enable or recommend somebody enable an experiment. Okay. So now we're going to move down to what's stable in air quotes. Again, these are not foolproof. I've ran into issues here. So let me go here. I'm opening Canvas on my other screen. We're going to make sure our settings match up here. So before I get into the stable features, we'll go ahead and take care of the ongoing experiments. So I do have grid container enabled, which is the default. I have optimized control loading turned off. I have the editor top bar turned off. And if you buy the starter site, you know, and you've seen this video or you haven't seen this video, like, it's just easy. If you want to change the settings, let's go in here and change them, right? I don't think I've ever had somebody come back and say anything about this. They've either just enabled them themselves when they needed it, or they just never needed it, which is what I would guess would be the case. But landing pages, I don't use that. Inactive. Nested elements, I do use for the Canvas starter site. Lazy loading of background images, again, I don't rely on Elementor I don't rely on Elementor to do any optimizations, really. It's a page builder, a site builder. Like it should just be focusing on those things. Elementor is overstepping, in my opinion, these days. You should rely on like solutions, vendors that focus on performance, right? Not vendors like Elementor that are just trying to make their retroactively fix features that they've implemented in their page builder, and they need to scramble and find ways to fix it, right? So that's just my opinion. Display conditions I have off for this site. Again, we're just recreating this site. Okay, every site's different. Menu, I have that inactive, and taxonomy filter I have at default, which is active. Okay, so that's what I'm using here. Oh, sorry. Let's see. Save for changes here. And grid containers used. Yeah, nested elements are used, and taxonomy filter are used. And I wouldn't have left these enabled if I didn't feel like I really wanted to use them, show people how to use them. If they weren't stable in my testing, you know, because I know how to test the stuff and what to look for. And I found that these were fine, okay? The only thing I would bring up is that the nested elements feature can slow some things down when you're in the actual editor only, okay? It doesn't slow down the front end, it's just the editor side of things, but they have a fix coming for that, okay? As far as the front end, everything was stable, everything was good. I felt comfortable enabling those things and showing people design options for those. Okay, stable features. It's generally safe to activate any of the experiments in this section. Again, only enable the experiments you will use and deactivate the rest. Each feature you turn on loads code in your website, so be sure you're willing to take a slight performance hit for each feature you activate. All right, same thing. So in this section, I leave this one on, which is the default, leave that on. I turn this one off because I've found that with MyListing websites, this breaks things, okay? Additional breakpoints, I turn that off. Flexbox, I leave on. Upgrade swiper library, I leave on. And that's because there are elements on this site to where we're doing like kind of like a carousel look. Now you can see that on the get starting pages where it's like it slides to show you things. So that's where that comes into play. I don't default to the new theme builder. It's just a personal preference. Build with AI, I turn everything AI off. I wish Elementor would do the same, but that's just my opinion. And then form submissions, I leave on. So let's save our changes. All right, that looks good. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. Okay, cool. All right, so we are all set there. I'm going to bring back our template here. And we've satisfied everything in our Elementor plugin settings. So that goes away. All right, guys, that is it. We now have a stable setup, a clone stable setup matching what Canvas is doing. If you're not familiar with Elementor the Element Manager feature here, you can absolutely check this out. What this does is just speed up the back end of the editor. So it's just having you load in the page editor what it is that you're actually using on your site rather than load all of the elements. So for that, you can just come over here and click into Elementor Manager, and you can click the Scan Element Usage button. And just that fast, it'll toggle off everything that's not in use. Sorry, not by default. You got to click this thing here. Deactivate unused elements. So you can click that. And you can see here, look at all these things that aren't used, but granted, we haven't started building yet. But what I typically find is even after a site's been fully built, in air quotes, that you're not using most of the things here. You just got to be really careful of what you disable. But you can always come back in here and enable the stuff, all right? The really important thing to remember, and you see this notice here, whatever you deactivate is also going to deactivate on the front end. So you really need to know what you're doing. You need to test this stuff. Don't just click some buttons and then expect everything to work perfectly. Just don't do that. Okay, so we haven't disabled anything here. We're just going to leave this as is. And yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next lesson. See ya.